I am today suspending my campaign. I'm proud to have delivered on 100% of my promises, and I will not stop now. It's clear to me that a majority of Republican primary voters want to give Donald Trump another chance. I signed a pledge to support the Republican nominee, and I will honor that pledge. He has my endorsement because we can't go back to the old Republican guard of yesteryear.
Ron DeSantis dropping out of the presidential race, throwing his support behind Donald Trump, just days ahead of the New Hampshire primary, where the latest polls show the former president widening his lead over Nikki Haley. Trump welcoming the endorsement from the Florida governor, Anne-Marie, saying this: "I look forward to working with Ron." That is a change of tone in the last 24 hours.
Oh, not just that, and a change of tone. He also said he's going to be retiring his nicknames for the governor of Florida, especially since he's been calling him Ron DeSanctimonious. He says that's over now that he's come out and endorsed me. Jonathan, a scathing opinion piece this morning from Politico. They weigh in saying, quote, "Perhaps Trump's vast lead could not be overcome, and this was the wrong cycle for DeSantis to run. Perhaps for someone so uncomfortable with people,
that's brutal.
This was the wrong decade or century. Still, that's no excuse for misspending over $130 million and running the worst presidential campaign in history." And I got to be honest with you, read the whole piece. This is actually some of the least scathing bit of this piece from Politico, just absolutely dumping on DeSantis' campaign and how it was run.
It didn't start well, did it?
No, this idea of failure to launch. I mean, talking about this idea with this Twitter or X
they thought it was going to be edgy.
They thought it was going to be edgy. It just failed. And then he was talking about how they broke the internet. And they said, no, it just failed. And that was sort of a question. It sort of highlighted the underpinnings of the campaign. I will just say at this point, big question about where that support goes. Does that help Nikki Haley? This is what Nikki Haley's wanted all along. Has it come too late? Is it enough?
Let's talk about that right now with Bloomberg's Kailey Leinz, live from New Hampshire. Kailey, walk us through how different New Hampshire will be versus Iowa just a week ago.
Well, in some ways, John, New Hampshire won't be drastically different for DeSantis no longer being in the race. He was polling in low single digits here, roughly 6% in the latest polls that we had been seeing. So his departure may help perhaps Trump on the margin, but still it largely is the two-person race that Nikki Haley was painting it a picture of as we emerged from Iowa. But in terms of actually how New Hampshire is different than Iowa, demographics are a huge part of it. Iowa obviously has a strong conservative base, a lot of evangelicals in the first in the nation caucus state. Those lended their support more to Trump. Nikki Haley really struggled to get those voters. What she's going to try to do here in New Hampshire is capture all of the independents, more moderate Republicans that she is trying to cater to. That's what New Hampshire is known for. But at this point, polling is suggesting that that just might not be enough. In the latest Suffolk University Boston Globe poll that came out this morning, she is behind Trump by 19 points. And the enthusiasm gap between these two candidates is still very wide, just as it was in Iowa.
And Kailey, she has the support of the governor there, who's very popular for a Republican in this state. I think about what his father used to say, which is Iowa picks corn, New Hampshire picks presidents. But it looks like when you look at the polls, he backed the wrong person to be the next potential president.
Yeah, Governor Chris Sununu obviously is very popular in New Hampshire, and he is still standing by Nikki Haley as a candidate. He is not a Trump Republican, even though he has said he would support him if Trump ultimately becomes the Republican nominee. He does not think that he holds Republican values, and he thinks Nikki Haley still could have a chance. That said, he and even Nikki Haley herself are starting to set the bar lower for her as we actually approach primary day tomorrow. He's suggesting that a strong second place showing, something better than Iowa, will be enough momentum to carry her forward in this race towards South Carolina, for example, which, yes, is her home state where she served as governor, yet she is still polling even farther below him there than she is here in New Hampshire. But he stressed to Joe Matthew and I when we spoke to him yesterday that New Hampshire is not a must-win state. None of the early states really are. It's until Super Tuesday that she's going to have to start winning in some of those states come early March. But he also talked about the economy. I asked him, you know, we have a stock market at the record high. We have unemployment still below 4%. The labor market's hanging in there. Inflation is down. Is this not something that any future president, perhaps a future President Haley, would want to emulate when he was criticizing the Biden administration? And this is what he told me in response.
Let's look at national credit card debt. Let's look at what everybody owes, right? The spending that has gone on, not just with the government, but now with personal spending, and the fact that inflation is crushing folks. And this whole idea that the Fed is coming out and going to lower rates, I'm telling you, the piper has to be paid at some point. I think we are in store for an economic downturn.
And we know, just as in Iowa, the economy is top of mind for voters, but so too is immigration, the issue of the border. And Nikki Haley essentially is suggesting that she will be able to do what President Trump could not during his first term, which is actually secure the border, do things like finish the border wall. The governor told us that the difference between Haley and Trump isn't necessarily on policy, but the ability to execute on that policy.
So, Kailey, the big question going into tomorrow is, where does the DeSantis votes go, though? Does she pick any of them up? But I guess you have to think it's only 5%, so it's still a long shot for her if you look at the polls.
Yeah, exactly. He just wasn't a significant factor in New Hampshire, nor was Vivek Ramaswamy, who also dropped out of the race and endorsed Trump after Iowa. It does seem, though, that probably by and large more DeSantis votes would go to the former president than they would to Nikki Haley. But the gap that she is currently facing, at least if polling is correct, is just so large that even those marginal DeSantis votes aren't necessarily going to make a difference. So it really becomes a question of what exactly Haley and the campaign define a strong second as. If you are coming in double digits below the former president in New Hampshire, again, a state with those moderate and independent voters that you are trying to attract, is that really a mandate to continue the campaign forward another 4 weeks to South Carolina? That primary, of course, is on February 24th. Yes, the Haley campaign has resources. She is backed by Americans for Prosperity Action, the Koch super PAC. And yet, as we've seen with Ron DeSantis, it feels that a lot more individuals, including those who are also running against Trump in this campaign, are just falling in line behind him. And I was at an event last night with many Republican strategists who have been involved in these primary campaigns in past cycles, all of them kind of just stressing that there is an inevitability here that Trump is going to be the nominee.